So many questions and points. I really cannot address all of them, and not even half probably. Just maybe a very few that in a way speak directly to what I was trying to say. That I think, yeah, I can say maybe something more useful about. I totally agree with what Cinzia just said. I think we are stuck, basically. We don't have easy solutions. I was just thinking when Yorgos was talking that maybe a way of going around that is to think that meetings do not have necessarily to be boring. So we can try to think of meetings that actually are joyful, and we can conceive of them in different ways in which you enjoy them. And I think in a way this is true. I mean, I enjoy personally the meetings of which I feel part, that I am constructing and that I'm building. I think the worst meetings, and this has been my experience as a young woman in many mixed meetings, especially when I was very young, completely lacking confidence, etc., was precisely that in a way I was passive. I was not exactly building the discussion. And I think in a way when we feel that we are building the discussion, we are contributing to that. I mean, the meeting itself can be very joyful and something that we really enjoy. But anyway, this was just, probably doesn't solve the problems, but anyway, I just put it there. Yeah, I want to address mainly 2 points. One is the one on anthropology that was raised by Luke and also by Fred. Yeah, I mean, basically, what I'm trying to say is that I think the problem with the resort to these anthropological sources, first of all, there are different anthropological sources, so some, especially the 19th century, early 20th century ones, were in many ways more biased. Not that the 20th century ones are not, but in a way there has been much more critical work done, especially in the 20th century, on the very methodologies and aims of anthropology. But apart from that, apart from the sources themselves and the fact that Morgan, so I'm talking also about a specific source, has been proved wrong on a number of grounds for his methodology, his very premises, etc., my main problem was with treating anthropology and anthropological sources first as historical sources on which we can base any assumptions and ideas about the origins of patriarchy. So this is the first problem. And the second problem is obviously that many of these studies were based on observations of contemporary societies, of coeval societies, not societies living in the past, but indigenous societies that were treated therefore like primitive, like archaic, and as we know, these were all denigratory terms, which were meant to treat these societies and collectivities as inferior. So obviously there is a methodological problem, a theoretical problem, and there is also the problem of the very Eurocentric, when not openly racist, assumptions that go with that. So that's the problem I was trying to address, and that's a problem of many of these sources that were used. So this was my main point. The second point I would like to address, that was raised by different people today, is how we combine anti-racism and anti-sexism. I think this is a very difficult issue in many ways, but nonetheless, I think the difficulty now is increased precisely by this climate, especially of Islam, because many of you, when referring to these problems, were actually referring to Islam and the allegedly oppressive practices of Islam, Islamic fundamentalism, etc., etc. I think we have a number of problems here in a way to disentangle, and I think one of the first is to understand, first of all, how much of women's oppression within, for instance, Muslim communities or religious communities as an oppression that women themselves are denouncing and are bringing to the fore, or is an oppression that we project onto them. And it seems to me that In many cases, is the second case. Okay,
You have no
let me
internal
finish.
idea of
Let
that.
me finish.
Sorry.
Then we can discuss this. It seems to me that in many instances is the second point. And the example that obviously comes to my mind is the example of the headscarf or the veil. So the veil is considered in our societies, especially in European, probably more continental European societies, there is probably much more of a debate than in England, as a sign of oppression, as a symbol of male dominance upon women, as something that Muslim women do not choose, etc., etc., etc. So that's why I'm saying, it seems to me this is a projection, because many Muslim women, when I'm sure there are Muslim women who do not choose the veil. I'm not going even into choice, because I think it's a very dangerous territory, but there are many women who actually not only choose the veil because that's their religion, that's their belief, that's their way of thinking, their culture, etc., 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 but also there has been a resurgence in the last 10 years or so of young women deciding, even if they were not absolutely pushed by their families, to put the veils on, precisely as a form of, as a sign of resistance against racism. And that's, I was talking to a friend of mine, a colleague who teaches in East London a few days ago, and she told me in the last 5 years there has been definitely, she sees many more women wearing a headscarf, which is a fashion statement, and also a way of saying, I'm different and I want to put this on. So, obviously, just to finish, because I think this is important, I'm not denying there is not gender-based violence within certain religious communities. I'm not saying that this does not exist. What I'm saying is that, first of all, the state already has the instruments to deal with that violence in many ways, because when we talk about domestic violence, when we talk about rape, forced marriages, genital mutilations, talking about the more so-called specific ones, all European states have laws against these specific forms of violence that, I'm not now saying that we should encourage the state to use its tools, but I'm just saying we should disentangle the forms of violence and oppression we are talking about and try not to project certain forms that precisely divert our attention from what's the real violence. And I think I use my time.